I used his card on a girl's trip to finance our affairs. He kicked me out of house when I came back. What's up, guys? Look, I know the title looks bad, but I swear, just hear me out. As far as I know, none of my friends or family use Reddit. I will be using fake names, though, just to be safe. My name is Vera, 24, female, and my husband is Walter, 27, male. We recently got married. It's been less than a year. Before that, we dated for 2 years. I met him when I had just started my last year of college. He didn't go to my college. In fact, he didn't go to college at all. When Walt was 18, he and his friends had an idea for an app. The only problem was none of them could code. That still didn't stop them. They decided not to go to college and instead put their all into developing the app. All that hard work paid off. After 3 years, they sold it to a big tech company for $5 million. No joke. Shared among the three of them equally, Walter walked away with a lot of money in his pocket. To put it lightly, Walter is loaded. Anyways, back to how we met. Walter was on my college campus for a tech event. I didn't even want to go to the event. I was studying something that had nothing to do with tech at all. My friends dragged me there anyway. That's when I saw him. Walter. Blue eyes, shoulder-length brown hair, and the cutest laugh I had ever heard. I was infatuated from the start. I knew that I just had to talk to this man. After the conference ended, I fought through the crowd of people gathered around him. Walter was shy. He still is, but it was 1,000 times worse then. He hated the attention those people were giving him. I could see it on his face. When I finally got in front of him, I pretended to be his secretary and told everyone very loudly that he had another appointment. Walter was happy to play along. It was only when we were far away from the building that he relaxed. We spent some time getting to know each other. He was from Minnesota. He had 2 older brothers, but he wasn't really close to them. He wanted to be a fireman when he was younger. With each new thing I learned about him, I realized I wanted to know more. I gave him my phone number and told him to text me. The next day, he did. I was so excited I screamed and woke up my roommates. We texted nonstop for 2 weeks before he asked me on a date. For the date, he took me to his friend's restaurant. Walter was shy but very charming and earnest. You could just tell he was an honest and straightforward guy. He held my hand when we had finished our dinner. He told me that he was dating to marry. He didn't want to waste his time with someone who couldn't see a future with him. He asked me if I felt the same way. I told him yes. Since I was a little girl, I always wanted a husband and family of my own. I wasn't very close to my family. Knowing Walter ticked all the boxes I wanted in a man. Why in God's name would I say no? The rest is history. We dated throughout my last year of college. He proposed the day after my graduation. We got married a year later. I know it might seem fast to some people, but I loved Walter. Sometimes I felt mad with it. I wanted to be around him all the time. I wanted to hear about his day, even the boring techie part. He loved me too. He showered me with gifts and attention. He introduced me to a life of luxury that I never would have known. About 3 months ago, 2 of my friends from college came to visit. Their names are Tanya, 24 female, and Grace, 25 female. Now friends is a strong word here. We were friendly in college, but never really friends. We drew closer after graduation when we both worked at the same company for a while. Tanya and Grace are fun. They never really think of the consequences of things that they do. I can see that now. However, I couldn't then. They've also never been huge fans of Walter. Looking back, it's possible that they were just jealous of me and my relationship. Not that it matters now. I don't really have a relationship anymore. Tanya and Grace both have long-term boyfriends. I think Grace is even engaged to her man. That didn't stop them from cheating on them all the time. It was when they came to visit that they told me all about it. As they giggled over how their boyfriends were clueless, I just sat there very confused. I couldn't understand why they would do that to someone they claimed to love. At that time, I couldn't imagine doing something like that to Walter and breaking his heart. When I told them that I would never cheat on my Walter, they just looked at each other and laughed. Tanya patted my head and told me to wait for the honeymoon stage to end. They were in town for 2 weeks on a mini vacation. They spent the entire trip hooking up with random men from bars and clubs. They'd then tell me about it the next day in extreme detail. I learned a lot from them, Loki. Do you guys know what a 2-man is? Up until 3 months ago, I didn't either. Grace told me that that's what they do, whenever they go on girls' trips. Now, you might be asking why I didn't tell their boyfriends. I admit, that was a little stupid of me. I should have told the boys the minute I found out. Maybe then, I could have somehow prevented my marriage from falling apart. But back then, I was operating on girl code. I thought I should show loyalty to my friends by not ratting them out to their partners. Stupid, I know. Honestly, I wish I did rat them out. Even when the girls left, I kept thinking about what they were doing. They didn't do it for the thrill. They didn't do it because their boyfriends were ignoring them. They just did it because they could. Meanwhile, Walter was as amazing as ever. He had his faults, but he genuinely loved me, so he tried to be better each and every day for me. But I couldn't get the idea out of my head. Leaving Walter back home while I ran around in a different state, getting my back blown out by someone else. It was intriguing. I also kept thinking of what Tanya said. Just wait for the honeymoon stage to end. I got that she meant that I'd soon stop loving Walter as much as I did before. Maybe that's why they were cheating. They'd been with their boyfriends for years. Maybe when you take off your rose-tinted glasses, other men start to become a lot more appealing. Despite all my thinking, I continued to be faithful to Walter. Sure, I saw hot guys everywhere, in the gym, at work, another park. But my focus was still on Walter. That all changed 6 months into our marriage, about a month after Tanya and Grace visited. Like I said, Walter is loaded. Like buy a second home without budgeting loaded. Some people will make half of what Walter has in his bank account and never work again because they don't need to. Not Walter. He's very ambitious. Even after selling his app, he continued to make more. Now, he wanted to launch his very own app under his company's name for the first time. Usually he just develops them, then sells them to the highest bidder. But he wanted to do something different this time. He was under a lot of stress. He left home before the sun was up and came back at night. Sometimes he even slept in his office. He only ever saw me at dinner before he'd drag himself upstairs and fall asleep. If you think I'm going after his lack of attention to me, you're wrong. Even while severely overworked, Walter still paid attention to me. He'd ask me about my day, hold my hand while we ate dinner, and still tell me how pretty I looked. I never felt neglected. The issue was my birthday. My birthday was right in the middle of this new app nonsense. Usually, Walter took me on a weekend getaway for my birthday. The first year we started dating, he took me to Dubai. The second, he booked us a trip to Greece. I know he'd only done it twice, but I expected him to do the same this year. I kept waiting for him to wave the tickets in my face and tell me where we were going this year. That never came. I didn't even get a gift. I didn't get a happy birthday. I didn't even get an acknowledgement of any kind. That's when I knew. He forgot. I was very sad. I never celebrated my birthdays growing up, so when I finally moved away for college, I was happy to finally get to celebrate them. Now, the man I dedicated my life to didn't even remember the most important day of our lives. The sadness became anger. I was so angry at him. I know he was busy and stressed, but Walter is the most organized guy in the world. No way he didn't write it down somewhere. No way one of his 3 personal assistants didn't remind him. I decided that he must have purposely decided not to celebrate my birthday. When I confronted him 1 week after my birthday, he just looked at me blankly. He looked tired. He had eye bags under his eyes. I repeated myself and he just told me he forgot. So casually, like he didn't know how important my birthday was to me. I asked him if he planned on making it up to me somehow. He told me he would, but not now. He said after the app launch, when things had calmed down. That was going to take forever. I couldn't wait that long. Walter didn't seem to care when I told him this. He just shrugged and told me to be patient. From that day, I started to resent him. I started to pull away from him little by little. I stopped cuddling him in bed. I stopped finishing up my dinner at the same time as him. I stopped suggesting movie nights. We stopped sleeping together. Walter noticed many times and asked why I was suddenly distant. I was too proud to admit that I wanted that birthday trip. So I said nothing. Eventually, he stopped asking me why I was pulling away. He pulled away too. This was when I started flirting with other people. I know some people might think that this is cheating, but I never really considered flirting to be cheating. If Walter flirted with anyone, I don't think I'd care, as long as it didn't lead to anything. And I never let it lead to anything, even though Walter hadn't touched me in weeks. 2 months after the birthday incident, I got a text from Grace. She told me that she and Tanya would be in town for a few days. They asked if we could meet up for some drinks. I immediately agreed. It was just what I needed. I was feeling very lonely. Walter's app was almost finished now, but he was still running around trying to make it perfect. I barely saw him. When we met up for dinner, Tanya and Grace told me more about their cheating. This time, I was fully on their sides. So what their boyfriends didn't know, sometimes men didn't have to know everything their girlfriends had going on. Tanya and Grace spent the whole night flirting with the waiter. He flirted back. He was young and cute. Every time he came to refill our waters, Tanya would encourage me to flirt with him. After a while, I did. Tanya and Grace were much more aggressive with it. They'd make very suggestive remarks that would make a hooker blush. They'd touch him at every given opportunity. They'd show some skin when he was looking their way. Eventually, when the dinner ended, they told me that they were going back to their hotel to sleep with him. I was shocked. Was it really that easy? I'd always thought that cheating was a lot more thought out. Hours later, when I was in bed, I kept thinking about Tanya and Grace having the time of their lives while I was stuck with a husband who forgot my birthday. I grabbed my phone off the bedside table and sent a text to Grace. 2 words. I'm in. We spent the next month trying to set a week that fit into our schedules. I know I haven't mentioned it, but I do have a job. I'm an interior designer for a company. I go to work 4 days a week, and I have a 2-week paid time off. The only problem is I've already used up my PTO this year. If I took another week off, I wouldn't get paid for it. In the end, I decided to just take my L and go on the trip. 1 week of not being paid won't put me into debt or anything crazy. In fact, I could decide not to work anymore and rely on Walter for the rest of my life. Telling Walter that I was going on a girls' trip was easy. He knew Grace and Tanya. He knew how close we had gotten within the past 2 years. And I think he thought it would be a good way to cheer me up. I'd admit I hadn't been the happiest wife. Knowing Walter was so eager to ship me off made me even angrier. Mind you, I was still angry that he forgot my birthday. I told Walter 2 days to the trip. Everything was already booked, from the hotel we were staying at to the plane tickets. I used my own money to pay for all that. The only thing I asked him to do was to drop me off at the airport. On the day I was supposed to travel, I got a text message from Walter. He told me that he was caught up at work and he won't be able to drive me to the airport. Well, great. I mean, I could probably book an Uber, but I wanted my husband to see me off at the airport. That was basically his job, wasn't it? As I carried my suitcase down the stairs, I saw something on the floor. It was Walter's card. It must have fallen out of his wallet when he went to work this morning. When I picked it up, I had an idea. Walter did say he was going to make up for forgetting my birthday. What better way to do that than to pay for a few things on my trip? I mean, he wasn't going to notice a few $1,000s missing. Walter was an honest guy, and I knew all his passwords and his PIN code for the card. It wasn't really hard for me to take it. Even if he did notice, I'll be back by then, and I could explain in person. Grace and Tanya met me at the airport gates. We were so excited to be going on our trip. I did feel a little bad that I was basically going to another state to cheat on Walter. But seeing how excited the girls were, I quickly became excited myself. We were just going to the next state over. Grace and Tanya told their boyfriends that they were going for a work conference. The hotel was nice. Tanya booked it. She said they had stayed in this hotel before when they went out of town and they loved it. We spent the first 3 days actually exploring the city. We went to the zoo. We went to the theater. We went to the park. We even pretended we were locals when we went to the bar. It was fun to pretend to be someone else for a while, even if it was just 3 days. We didn't actively start cheating until day 4. We went out to the club and it was great. I haven't been clubbing since I was in my junior year of college. When we were there, Tanya and Grace kept scoping out the dance floor to find someone we could take home. They eventually set their eyes on these 3 guys who looked like they were together. They were around our age, and more importantly, they were hot. We immediately assigned ourselves to each one of them. I got the tall, blonde one. I think his name was Lars or something. I don't even remember, honestly. They were visiting from Sweden. Why they thought Ohio was the perfect vacation spot, I have no idea. It didn't take much to convince them to go back to our hotel with us. They were very eager even when we told them that we all had partners. I think that even turned Lars on some more. We got back to the hotel and slept together all in one bed. It was wonderful. I couldn't remember the last time I had been touched like that. When I woke up the next day, I had a text message from Walter. He was asking if I had seen his card anywhere. I ignored him. I just assumed that Walter would be level-headed as usual, and we'd talk it out later. I was wrong. By the end of day 5, Walter was blowing up my phone. He told me that he saw the charges on the card, and it was from the state that I was in. Now, you would think that this is the part of the story where I text Walter and try to do some damage control. That's what a rational, considerate human being and wife would do. Did I do that? No, because I didn't even see the effing text. Why? Well, I was at a strip club. At lunch, I suggested that we keep the streak of going home with random hot guys up. Tanya and Grace loved the idea. We bar hopped for hours, but we couldn't find any guy that was hot, old enough, and willing to come home with us. We were just about to give up and get back to the hotel when I had a brainstorm. The strip club that had posters everywhere was definitely going to be full of hot guys. It was a male strip club. You know, like Magic Mike. The strip club was great. Me and the girls all got private dances from the strippers. My stripper was a guy called French, like the French people. It was obviously not his real name, but I didn't even care about that. Just as the dance was about to end, I whispered in his ear to ask if he wanted to sleep with me and my friends for some extra cash. He was hesitant until I pulled out Walter's card. It was a black Amex. I literally saw French's eyes dilate as he eyed the card. He agreed after that. We took him back to the hotel and bought champagne. We drank and hooked up the whole night. It was fun, just like the night before was fun. When I woke up, Tanya and Grace were still sleeping. I immediately noticed 3 things. First, French was gone. At first, I didn't think too much about it. He didn't owe us breakfast or anything. We didn't know the guy, and he didn't know us. Second, my phone had a million different texts and missed calls from Walter. I ignored them again. I didn't even read them. Lastly, the card was gone. That one woke me up. I jumped out of bed and started frantically searching for it. All my movement must have woken the girls up because when I turned around, they were looking at me with pure confusion. I explained that I couldn't find my husband's card. They just shared a look and laughed. It reminded me of the look they shared all those months ago when they first told me about their affairs. They told me very casually that French probably stole it. I was dumbfounded. For some reason, I hadn't even thought about that. It didn't even cross my mind. I started panicking. I had no idea who French was. I didn't know his real name. It was a big city. He could be anywhere right now. Plus, I knew that if I just stole a black Amex, I would be out of the state in an hour max. Tanya and Grace found my panic hilarious. They just laughed as I had a mini anxiety attack right in front of them. I know it will sound dumb to you that I'm just coming to the realization now, but that's when I knew that those girls were not my friends. When I finally picked up my phone to see what Walter sent me, my jaw dropped. The first texts were asking why I took his card. The next asked why I had gone to a club and bought drinks for 6 people. The last asked why I was at the strip club last night. I knew I had to lie my way out of this. Possibly someone he knew saw me at the strip club and told him. I could lie and say it wasn't me and just someone who looked like me. I sent this to him expecting him to calm down. He didn't. He replied to me seconds later. He sent me the charges on the card. The name of the strip club was on there. I didn't know that cards show where you use them. I tried to lie my way out of this mess, but none of my texts went through. Walter had blocked me, but now I was hysterical. I started loading all my clothes into my suitcase. When Grace and Tanya asked me where I was going, I told them that I was going home. I had to go talk to Walter. I didn't care that I had a return ticket in 2 days. I had to be home as soon as possible. Tanya and Grace didn't even help me pack. They just kept giggling as I panicked and got out of there as quickly as I could. I was on a plane back home in 3 hours. I tried to text Walter many times in the airport as I waited for my flight. None of them got delivered. He still had me blocked. I spent the entire 1-hour plane ride biting my fingernails from anxiety. I had no idea where Walter's head was. I half expected to get home and he won't be there. I'll simply never see him again. He could do it. He was rich enough to just pack up and move to Norway or somewhere like that. Somewhere I'd never go. The minute I got back to my state, I booked a cab straight home. I kept thinking of ways to explain away those card charges. But nothing made sense. Walter was never going to believe them. When the cab dropped me off outside my house, I was surprised to see Walter's car in the driveway for 2 reasons. First of all, I thought he'd have left me. Second, I thought he'd be at work. I rang the doorbell with my heart beating out my chest. Walter opened the door with a small smile on his face. I instantly relaxed. Maybe he wasn't angry after all. I tried to walk into our home, but Walter blocked off the door with his body. Walter was a big guy. I couldn't push past him if I tried. He just stood in the doorway with a smile on his face. When I asked why he wasn't letting me on, his smile got wider. "Because you don't live here anymore, babe." That was the last thing I expected to hear. I thought he would leave the house, not me. I opened and closed my mouth a few times. The only thing that I managed to ask him was where all my stuff was. Walter shrugged and told me he donated it all to charity. My ears started ringing. "What the heck?" I asked again because I definitely didn't hear him right. Walter told me the exact same thing. When I told him he couldn't do that, he told me that he bought all my stuff anyways so he could do whatever he wanted to them. He told me that the stuff I got for myself was in the garage. He slammed the door in my face. I was shocked. I ran to the garage to see my things carefully folded and packed inside moving boxes. Why would he do this? Walter and I don't have a lot of friends, and I'm currently no contact with all of my family. I had no idea what to do. I did the logical thing and called Tanya and Grace's boyfriends on a group call. They both picked. I launched into my story being careful not to drag Tanya and Grace into it. I was hoping that they'd talk some sense into Walter. He had always respected them in the past. I was wrong. They knew I was lying. Walter figured out that Tanya and Grace were also cheating. He told their boyfriends immediately. They both cussed me out over the phone. I felt like a child getting scolded. Now I was really out of options. I called Grace and Tanya to help me brainstorm. When they answered, they sounded teary. Their boyfriends had broken up with them over the phone. They yelled at me for effing up their game. I could tell they were running or something. I guess they were trying to catch a flight back home just like me. A part of me was happy that those girls were getting some kind of karma for laughing at me this morning. It was at this point that I realized that no one was coming to save me. I had to put on my big girl pants and thug this one out. Luckily, I still had my car keys. I drove over to a McDonald's and sat there thinking of how to get Walter to at least allow me into the house. I thought for hours and I had no idea what to do. That's when I had an idea. I remembered that Walter liked to do some work in the office on Mondays. I decided that I'd get there before him and beg him to let me home. When I got to the office, his secretary let me into his office. That was a good sign. It meant he hadn't slandered my name yet. She told me that he was waiting for me in the boardroom. That part confused me. He didn't know I was coming. How would he be waiting for me? Either way, I still went there. When I entered the boardroom, I instantly knew I had walked into a trap. Walter was smart. He knew I'd come find him. Walter was at the table with like 3 lawyers around him. They all looked very serious. Walter gestured for me to sit down. I was too confused to even disobey. Walter's lawyers handed me a bunch of papers. They reminded me that Walter and I signed a prenup before we got married. They asked if I remembered that. Of course I did. That prenup ensured that I was entitled to a quarter of Walter's yearly income since I was dependent on him financially. Walter smiled really big now. At this point, I had figured out that Walter wanted a divorce, but from that look on his face, I knew he had one final blow to knock me down. Walter's lawyers told me that I would not be receiving the money. My jaw dropped. They reminded me that the prenuptial had a clause that allowed Walter to keep his money in the case of infidelity. They said some other stuff, but I didn't really hear any of it. At the end of it, they slid over a thick envelope to me. I didn't even need to see it to know that the divorce papers were in there. Then Walter told me to leave the building. He didn't even glance at me as he told me. I feel humiliated. I lost my sweet rich husband because I went on a girls' trip. That's why I came on here. I don't want advice. I've already accepted that my marriage is over and the rich life I've been living is gone. I just want to know if anyone here has ever been in a similar situation. I would like to feel better about my marriage falling apart and being homeless, LOL. Comment 1. For the love of God, take some accountability. I didn't hear one. I'm sorry in this story. Just justification after justification. My advice. Lawyer up. If you can afford one. El Mao. Comment 2. OP, it sounds like you like Walter's money more than you like Walter himself. A gold digger and a cheater. That's crazy, NGL.